Hi, this is Marlene. A warm welcome from Glasgow, Scotland to everyone around the world. I'm going to be sharing with you the most amazing group of people who have incredible skills and expertise to make our world one of health and peace for all who live here, humans and non-humans alike. My guest today on Marlene and Friends is Professor T. Colin Campbell, the world's most recognised nutritionist and an opponent of the big food industries. Dr. Campbell's research has focused on how eating protein, especially dairy protein, encourages cancer growth. His principal scientific interests, which began with his graduate training way back in the late 50s, has been on the effects of nutritional status on long-term health. Dr. Campbell spent decades working on national and international food and health policies and publishing hundreds of scientific papers. He's best known for his research in rural China and Taiwan and the publication of the hugely successful The China Study. The New York Times actually called the book the Grand Prix of Human Epidemiology. The book was written by Dr. Campbell and his son Thomas M. Campbell and is now an international bestseller. Dr. Campbell's other books, Whole, Rethinking the Science of Nutrition, and The Low Carb Fraud, are also invaluable sources of reference, and I would encourage all of you to purchase and start reading these books. You'll find all sorts of wonderful articles and details on the T. Colin Campbell Centre for Nutrition Studies course on Dr. Campbell's website at nutritionstudies.org. Hi, I'm Marlene Watson-Tara and I'm in service for a healthy world. Today I'm so delighted to welcome the fantastic Dr. Colin Campbell, a gentleman and scholar, an incredible humanitarian, a fellow Scot, a dear friend, and just the most beacon of light in the world right now, teaching us all how to understand the mass confusion that is around nutrition. The one thing that I want to share with you all is when I first read Dr. Campbell's book way back in 2006, it was just incredible. His background as a farm boy, you would not believe the story to where he came from in terms of how his life turned to what he does today. So, Colin, Dr. Campbell, without further ado, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be involved in this conversation, as always.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, you know, you've got so much going on, and I know 2015 was a hugely busy year for you with so many things going on. But the first question I do want to open up this conversation with is, how has the medical profession responded to you as a person who is telling society that much of what they do is not needed?
Well, actually, it was a challenge in the beginning, I'm sure, for my colleagues in medicine. And I had spoken over the years to medical schools prior to the publication of the China Study from time to time. But when I started to speak to them after the China Study came out, at first I was greeted with a lot of silence.
Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't do very well there, not too many questions kind of thing. But actually, in the last 4 or 5 years, the majority of my lectures, and I've given many, the majority of my lectures are now to medical schools.
Fantastic.
They are actually warming up, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's a sign of good times ahead.
That's wonderful to hear. So that's why we desperately need you over here. And don't forget, Dr. Campbell, that you are Scottish.
Yes, I am. I first generation, proudly, of that fact. My dad was technically Scotch-Irish, but still always maintained a Scottish background. He's born in Northern Ireland. And, of course, I've traveled in Northern Ireland, Scotland, still have relatives there. Yeah. No, it's my favorite place on the planet.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you are one of our favorite people on the planet, so we need more of you over here. You know, this takes me to the next question, which is incredibly unbelievable. But, you know, when did you discover that disease can be controlled by nutrition?
That actually happened early on in my career, way back in the 1960s. I had graduate students, they did research and so forth and so on. And we had a technique in those days, a little bit primitive by the standards of this day. But I was just basically asking the question in our research. You know, doing the kind of experiments, for example, to see if, given a certain genetic background, whether we could actually change the way those genes get expressed. Then about 20, 30 years later, the whole Human Genome Project started.
Yeah.
And now it's much more sophisticated regarding the role of genes, but it's turning out. I mean, we see that in so many different ways. It's
the thing, that we feel we get challenged with all the time in our own work, why the medical profession are not listening to, people like yourself, your explanation on the whole thing with gene expression, not, being controlled by nutrition, and it's not just the mere presence of mutated genes. And, we see people all the time, Bill and I, for counselling with cancer, and, their oncologists are telling them it's nothing to do with the food, it's the genes. So why are they not listening to you?
Well, actually, the whole enterprise, in a sense, of science and the practice of science, the practice of medicine, is what I refer to as being very reductionist. We tend to think of one kind of thing at a time, one kind of nutrient, one kind of cause of disease, and so forth. And so, therefore, that leads to the whole concept of developing pharmaceuticals to treat disease. And unfortunately, what we do with that approach, although it brings a lot of money, on the one hand, what we do with that approach is very focused. It's sort of magic bullet sort of oriented. I don't know whether our brains work that way, I guess. But in reality, when we take that approach, we're ignoring this enormously complex system that we call life, in a sense, everything working together.
Yeah.
So, and when we do that, we do it at expense because we get a lot of side effects. I'm talking about something here, obviously, is really quite fundamental in the sense of how we now practice medicine and how we, I think, ought to practice medicine. And as I said a moment ago, I'm really delighted to be getting some friends on board.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's absolutely fantastic, and so needed, as we know, the whole disease in the world escalates daily. So to have some medical professionals coming on board would just be an absolute godsend. So congratulations on making a big inroads into that. Can I take you further back in your career to the most fascinating insight into what happened with you? And as most people believe now, cognitive dissonance for me is hugely abundant in everybody that I speak to. They will not believe and will rationalise about anything when you explain to them about the whole animal protein, casein and cancer. So you were brought up on a farm. I mean, what a shock to you, the way you lived your life up until you started studying this. Can you share that with the world?
Well, as you just said, my views were the same as everyone else's views, especially coming from the farm. And I was the first in my family to go to college, actually.
Right.
My father did not have a college degree. In fact, he only had a couple years of formal education. But in any case, when I went away to school, I was totally oblivious. I think of possibilities. I was just interested in science. Eventually, I had the opportunity of working in a laboratory of a fairly famous professor at Cornell. And I from that background, everything that was the good diet really was high in protein and fat and so forth and so on. I mean, that's what I believed. And in fact, my doctoral dissertation in the beginning was, in fact, on an attempt to try to promote the consumption of more animal protein.
Unbelievable.
There was no questions about it. That's just really talking about cognitive dissonance. That's just a fact of life. I didn't know anything to the contrary.
Sure.
And so eventually when I did then, though, get involved in finishing my graduate work, going on to do some postgraduate work at MIT, later then taking a professorial position, I had an opportunity of doing some work in the Philippines, where we were attempting to feed malnourished children in that poor country. And the first thing that came to our minds in those days, not just mine, but my senior colleague and everyone else, what we had to do to help to resolve that problem was to make sure they got enough animal protein.
Wow.
I should just say protein. And animal protein is supposed to be better, so that's what we did. And then I happened to see something that was totally at odds with that. It was totally anecdotal. It was, at least at the time I saw it, and I thought, this is crazy. I don't believe that. it turned out that the children who were essentially most likely to get a certain kind of cancer that we were interested in were coming from families who consumed the most protein, the few families, I should say, very few. And it was very odd. As I say, not believable. I learned about it on the golf course of all things. I was more interested in my golf than that idea, but it kind of stuck with me. And then there was some other evidence that came, I saw too, from an obscure medical journal, and I said, wow, wait a minute, this is something interesting. So I organized a research effort, that meaning getting funding, in this case from the National Institutes of Health in the United States, National Cancer Institute in particular. I started getting funding to explore this idea. It was so different, so provocative.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And that particular grant lasted for the next 27 years, which I think is some kind of record. I kept going back and they kept giving me more and I was publishing it and so forth and so on. And finally I had to deal with the problem. Animal-based protein in the form of casein, the main protein of cow's milk of all things, was turning on cancer. I said, this is crazy, but then we started looking at it in great depth and publishing it professionally, getting feedback from my peers, and they kept giving me funding. So I just kept going. And now it turns out to be even a much, much bigger story.
Yeah, of course. When I was, I am a graduate of the plant-based nutrition course, Colin Campbell at Cornell. It's a fantastic course, even for self-development or even for protecting your own family, and particularly through the modules. The interesting thing for me was the easy way you explain the initiation of cancer, because people think it just pops up. They don't really look at the whole progress of, how long it can take to appear. So the way that you even put that whole segment together, understanding the whole protein, is kids could even learn it. It's fantastically put together. So congratulations on that. It was a wonderful course, and I would encourage anybody to actually take that on board and do it.
Well, thank you for the for the plug in a sense, but that course is really now doing really well. We've had about 7,000 graduates.
Fantastic.
Taking a course, and as you know, they get a certificate from the branch of Cornell University, to acknowledge that, a certificate from our foundation. And of all the courses that Cornell teaches online, ours is one of them. There's more than 200 courses. Ours is now ranked number 1 out of the 200. And
absolutely wonderful. Absolutely fantastic. Well done, you. Do you have many medical professionals embarking on that course or not?
Yes. We actually are able to offer so-called 30 continuing medical education credits for doctors.
Great.
The only one with this kind of course that has that opportunity. So about a third of our students are doctors and other primary healthcare people. So we've got a lot of professionals involved in the course now too. And we have other lecturers as well, beside myself, and they're all physicians or, qualified in that sense.
Okay, fantastic.
My youngest son, Tom, who is now a physician, by the way.
Wonderful.
He's becoming one of the chief voices of that course.
That's great. Now, Tom co-authored the China study with you, yeah?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he did. Okay. And then I'd love to talk a little bit about Nelson and your other son, the director of Plant Pure Nation, and I'd like you to tell me how it's impacting the world. I know you've had a very busy year touring around the States with Plant Pure Nation. How's it all going?
Oh, it's going really well. That's our oldest son, Nelson, who was actually trained in economics and government, so he has that kind of interest,
right.
In a sense of the impact of disinformation on the public in that context. And so the film was really about why haven't people heard this before? And it really began with my lecturing on the floor of one of our state legislatures in Kentucky.
Okay.
And so that we did a tour around the United States of 23 cities in 2015. It premiered in Hollywood in July. End of June, 1st of July, and now it's been shown in 100 and some theaters around the country, and we're very, very excited about it. Nelson, he got the producer for it. He's the director, and his producer is the same guy who was the producer for Forks Over Knives.
Oh, okay, right, great.
So
Which you were in, yeah, of course.
So those two films are really now providing information in a sort of a different format, image, if you will, movies.
Absolutely, and education, as we all know, is the only way out of this railroad mess that we all happen to have ourselves in. So, for me, education is key. And the other day, actually, I had a client who booked her nephew, who's 15, and he's probably your youngest fan, I would imagine, in the whole of Scotland, UK, Europe, even. And he's promoting your book to everybody. He gives copies of your book, The China Study. He's 15 years of age. And this is the audience that we need to reach, This is the audience of the future. These are the kids and the youth that we need to push forward. Many of them, of course, as you appreciate, come to this way of thinking because of animal cruelty, They're maybe not in that space of nutrition. But then they start getting educated, and, this is fantastic. So that's where I place a lot of my passion, educating the youth and getting them moving forward, because in Scotland right now we have such an ageing population, and in 20 years more than 45% of the population here will be over the age of 75. Now they'll all be sick. I was at an old folks home the other day, and it's just sacrilege and criminal to look at these people in their 70s, maybe 80, but even 70s, sitting there just medicated with no existence, and it's heartbreaking. And for me, I'm pretty radical in my approach. I have a very Scottish, no-nonsense sense of sort of approach to health. I've been like that most of my life, so I sometimes think I'm not here to win a popularity contest, so I push out all the time with what I'm passionate about. And I look at these people and I think, no, it's so wrong. It's so unnecessary. And they're investing money all the time in dementia. How can we research and find... Look at what's on the plate. So, as you say quite rightly, in all your books, in the movies, health begins in... at the end of your fork or on your plate, and it's about conquering your kitchen and getting people back to the way of life that sustains longevity and good health. So I am on a mission to push out people like yourself who are doing amazing work in the world. You're stand up, you're righteous, you're strong, the facts are there, so it's not like some story that's been made up. So we're never going to get it from the government, so it's like this whole grassroots movement, and that's why your Plant Poor Nation movie is just going to be phenomenal worldwide.
Yeah, by the way, you just reminded me of something, the conversation we just had, namely about children. I couldn't agree more about the fact that young people really need to get this, and interestingly, they do sort of get it.
Yeah.
They're not cluttered up in their minds like us older guys are. But in any case, on that point, just yesterday in the Boston Globe, a big newspaper in Boston, they had a big article in there about the most famous athlete now in the United States, Tom Brady. He's a quarterback for the New England Patriots, who's been in the Super Bowl and all that sort of stuff. There's an article in the Boston Globe about the fact that his diet has been changing thanks to his personal chef, and his personal chef is a student of the course that you took and we talked about.
Fantastic.
And so the Boston Globe was talking about our course and about some of my work, and also, I'm making this point because I've worked with several, and indirectly or casually, with several world-class athletes who are now getting into this. So for the young people, they need to know that this kind of information actually creates superior physical capability.
Of course.
They can become better athletes.
Absolutely.
Gary Player, which is a very famous fellow in golf, he was one of the first to come on board, and we've been out to South Africa and stayed in his place, in fact, and Gary's been a really great promoter of this idea and other athletes. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely, and even, my mum, who you would love, Colin, she's 90, she's 90 in a few months, and she's like a girl, she's out dancing and doing all this stuff, and she's the biggest fan I have, at 90 years. She has no medication. She has nothing. If there's something wrong with her, I'll make her some of my home remedies. Put a tofu compress on her sore knee or something. It's wonderful, and she's a huge advocate of what I do. And she's funny, and she'll say, "I don't understand why the world won't listen," and I listen to you. So I'm hoping that there's a big breakthrough or something happens soon for everybody that's involved in this type of work. Because collectively we all share and push out the information, then the bigger the noise around the world, and that's what I see. So, I absolutely love and adore, who you are and what you stand for, and you're not self-righteous in any way. And I always say to Bill, Bill, my husband, I always say, you're so humble, it's like, you do your work and you just get on with it. The fact is, the food that the world is eating is making them sick. And you will never stop working until you get a big breakthrough, and it's definitely coming soon. Big shift in consciousness.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, big shift.
Yeah, I was talking about not having drugs. As you know, I'm 81.
Yeah.
Getting on with it, and I don't take drugs. My wife doesn't take drugs.
Fantastic.
And my dad and his brother and in my family, on my father's side, they all passed away because of heart disease.
Sure.
Eating the wrong food. They were outdoors and all that, but they were eating the wrong food, and so I didn't want to pay that price.
No, I know. And I remember when I spoke to you about my brother's prostate cancer. Remember, his PSA was 580, and 7 weeks of cooking with me, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and bossing him around. It came down to 1.6. And he takes the copy of my book to the oncologist, and they just laugh and say, "Oh, it's nothing to do with food," But he knows, and we have clients all the time but that's not what we want to be about. We want to be about educating and feeling fantastic. Like Bill, like myself, I'm 60 next year. I feel like a girl. I feel like I have energy at some at 25. Because of how I've always eaten, whole foods, plants, hydrate, exercise. There's no other way to live, because you get up in the morning, your energy should soar every day. So your testimony, your family are testimony, the people that live and teach what we do are testimony. So we just all got to keep going and keeping the wheels moving and until the masses join, and it will happen.
Yep. I agree.
So, I always feel as well, there's not enough laughter in the world, and people think, I don't know in your side of the world, but in my side of the world, people think, it's so boring, and people are so boring and unfunny that live this way of life and teach. We have such incredible fun and laughter in our life, and if I didn't have fun with what I do, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm sure in your career there's been so many different funny things that's happened, and I just wanted to ask you to share something that was hysterically funny or something that you still chuckle about that has happened to you on a personal level during your career. Does something come to mind?
My whole career, in a sense, has been a funny journey.
Yeah.
I take it seriously at times, but the things I say and the things that you say to others, the kind of reactions we get, we could laugh. I mean, sometimes I do laugh. I don't laugh at them, but I try to laugh at them. And the whole thing. I mean, I can't believe that we have this information.
I know.
It's so powerful, and it's not getting out there. And so I oftentimes think back to my own roots on the farm.
Sure.
When we used to shovel this stuff, I did that enough. And when the cats are done, taking out the manure spreader. I sort of think in that sense. I'm still shoveling it.
Yeah.
And that's what they think. But in reality, we had to do that too.
Absolutely.
We had to do all that. So I think in terms of my work on the farm, out in the fields and so forth, and I actually was a hunter as well.
Right.
I mean, all the things that farm boys do. And so, I look at this area of science, professional work and professional this and that, and it becomes so stilted, almost.
Absolutely.
And it's too locked into, I'm right, you're wrong kind of attitude.
I know.
And we're not relating to, our friends and family and other people in the right way. where some laughter is a good thing to have.
Absolutely. And, the thing here too, Colin, if we can't do what we do with love, and I know you do your work with great integrity and great love, and it's for the love of you, what you're doing is continuing to keep you going, because you must sometimes think, what else sustains you, because you get, you've brought all this incredible information to the world, and, and I'm the same, and if I didn't have fun and laughter in my daily life every day, I would just think, what's it all about, So,
I'm coming back to Scotland.
Yeah, you have to come back. We're very fun, Scottish, happy people,
I know the pubs.
Yeah, the pubs.
One of my favorite places.
Yeah.
We spent a year in England. We traveled to Scotland as well, and so there's where you get the fun discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, because of, the work you do in the world, and even, right now we have so many clients that are very ill with all sorts of things, and as you say, the information's there. You can only give them the tools and teach them that the human body's an incredible self-healing organism.
Oh, right.
And, we give them the tools and say, you have to do it. You're the one that's in the driving seat. So when they heal and, they're renewed, it's just so phenomenal to see, because for me, life is everything, If you don't have your health, what's the point? Getting up every day. Health is everything, and without health, everything is nothing. So every day I act as if it's impossible to fail. I know I'm very bossy. People tell me I'm very bossy with them, all my clients, but, it's the only way to be. So I get them in here, I teach them how to conquer their kitchen. And we have students that come from all around the world as well to do our coaching course. So we just got to keep, as I say, lighting up all these lighthouses around the world. And the more lighthouses we have people coming from Malaysia, China and Saudi Arabia in April to study with Bill and I. They'd go back to their countries and they'd bring all these lighthouses back, So we need to get your book, and if I'm like an information broker and I'm a lighthouse and pushing out to these 8,000 people that said, I don't know what the China study is. I mean, it's incredible. But remember, not everybody lives in a social media on a website. They don't, and that's what we forget sometimes.
Well, just yesterday, again, reaching different parts of the world. I obviously worked in some areas of the world that are really in need of a lot of resources. But yesterday, we just got a communication from the Doctors Without Borders group.
Oh, wow.
In South Africa. They were out working, doing their thing, and they're wanting now to work with us and taking the course, by the way.
Right. Okay, that's incredible.
Sort of reaching out to people, who don't have the means.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The medical resources to do their work, and actually all they need to do is to start growing the stuff in their
Exactly, I mean, even over here in the UK, it's scary. They have no food security. Everything they make here, they export. Everything they eat here, they import. I mean, It's just crazy, and they need to start growing green and moving farmers back to agriculture and grains, and look at the barley and the wheat and the fava beans and the things that could be grown here. And not feeding, all the grain, which I'm not going to get into environmental stuff, but, that's a lot of what we teach as well, and I know you do, but it's just the world is just insane. So the sanity has to come back to getting people to eat well, and then everybody will start to have healthy brains and healthy consciousness again.
Yeah, this works both on our bodies physically, but now we're getting a lot of evidence it works on our sort of mental, and psychological characteristics as well.
Absolutely, yep.
Still better.
Absolutely.
They're not in pain. They're not have to think about which kind of drugs should be taken, and so forth and so on.
Well, I always say to my little mum, who is going to New York. She's over in your neck of the woods next month for her 90th birthday. She wants to go to New York shopping. I mean, how fantastic is that? She loves the, all the shops there, and, Central Park, and I just think, long may she live. That's what everybody should be: happy, healthy, dead. There shouldn't be all this, cancer and heart disease and arthritis. And I had a nurse came for counselling recently, and she said the people that are in her surgical ward constantly getting knee replacements, hip replacements, new shoulders. And she's now in our camp. She's actually studied with us, and she said, this is unbelievable. This is what they should, should be doing. They shouldn't be getting uni. So, you know, I just say, Colin, God bless all of them. And the more they read your book, the more they study your work, the more they watch Plant Pure Nation, join the revolution, and then we'll all get there at the same time.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So I could talk to you forever, you know, but you'll be coming to Scotland soon.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We've been talking about it too much. So I really want to make the opportunity, get the opportunity. I've only got about another 30 or 40 years. So
yeah, I know. Well, you're looking fantastic on it anyway, and I wish you, Karen, and the family a wonderful 2016 and continuing growth around the world with your wonderful message. I should bow down to you in admiration, and I'm not saying that to embarrass you in any way, but really, you know, you're such a leader in the world of what you're doing, and you do it in such a humble way, so it's wonderful. That's why we all love you in Scotland. So come soon, and let's party.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much for the time, Dr. Campbell. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.